Welcome back to the 6K Sports Sedan and Wagon Challenge presented by Continental Tire. Today we are ripping the engine out of the wagon. With the S62 V8 now fully refreshed, it is time we focus our efforts on the wagon and getting this old lump out of here. And I think the first thing we're going to do is, should we try to start this thing, DP? This thing hasn't run in like 5 years.
You want to smoke us out before we do 4 hours of work here?
Just fire it up for a quick second?
Sure, okay.
Maybe not. Let's see what happens to an engine that's sat for this long, right?
Fair. All right, let's do it.
We are missing a bunch of things like cluster, and I think that's about it. So
the rear wipers on too.
Yeah, the rear wipers going back and forth.
Oh,
so
yeah. These ones too. Battery.
Battery. Wow, that's kind of remarkable. It's running.
It sounds really happy about it.
It sounds like the belt is slipping, obviously. And there was a bit of lifter tick, obviously because the oil pressure built up. But look at that, man. This thing's been sitting for 5 years and fired up. I mean, that's BMW right there for you.
You know what the Lexus wouldn't have done though after sitting for 5 years?
What's that?
It wouldn't have made any ticking noises in the belt.
Man,
The belt wouldn't have squealed either.
I don't know about that. But look at that thing. It was purring. It wasn't like misfiring or anything.
It didn't throw a rod. I'm impressed. I'm impressed.
Fire this thing up again. It's running like a champ.
I'll give you this one.
Absolute champ.
Before you drain the oil, can we address the elephant in the room here? Look at that hot mess. What is it with BMW and oil leaks?
It's just people don't service the things when they're supposed to. Like, I guarantee you that's all from the valve cover gaskets, all the sludge that's running down. That's all the oil that's under here. There's just the service life of gaskets and all that stuff, especially in a place like California where the temperatures are high and things tend to dry rot very quickly. They just don't do it enough, and the result is BMWs that are just wet underneath. It doesn't really... I mean, we just started it up, so it's got a bit of a smell to it, but I did change the oil in this vehicle pretty religiously, so at least I did take care of that.
You were saying, though, that you might see some plastic in the oil for some reason?
Yeah, so a lot of you actually commented, why didn't we do the chain guides on the S62? And I spoke to a bunch of people, and apparently the S62s don't run as hot as these M62 V8s. And that's why the chain guides tend to fail, is just they heat cycle too many times and they get too hot and brittle. So these engines are prone to that where those ones aren't. And I think the last time I did an oil change with this, I was like, oh, what's this weird plastic piece inside the oil pan? And sure enough, I think it was one of the chain guides starting to disintegrate. I'm super curious to see what this oil looks like, because the one thing this car was giving me problems with was the automatic transmission. When it warmed up, it was like bucking and kicking. So this ain't the gearbox on this is for sure full garbage spec. The engine I'm sure I can sell for a couple of $100, but this probably hasn't been changed in forever.
It looks really watery.
Oh God, it reeks too.
Looks
so
very thin too.
Yes, if you look at that, yeah, it's super thin.
Yeah.
Usually, this is probably one of those
long overdue changes.
Lifetime
maybe
oils,
yeah.
right? Like in this era of BMW, they were saying, oh, you can just run it for a lifetime, and then people weren't changing their oil, which is why I suspect this car was originally donated, is because the gearbox was acting up, and the guy was like, I'm done with this car, it's gone. While we're at it, wow, that cracked loose very, very easily, almost too easily. We're gonna drain the diff fluid as well, because I am replacing this differential with an M5 one. You certainly want to do that. So let's see what this fluid looks like here. It's actually, it smells like diff fluid and it looks pretty good.
It looks very clean, actually, yeah.
Thinking I may have serviced this. I think, I don't recall. My memory's hazy from 5 years ago. And now for the fun part, we begin to strip the entire drivetrain out of here, starting with the exhaust system. You know what? We've been doing a lot of complaining about BMWs, working on them and all that, DP, but I think really what the problem is rust, not the car itself, because the exhaust system came off of this car like no problem. The drive shaft just came out with an issue, right?
Yeah, it's true.
So maybe we've got it all wrong. We just need to be buying cars from the southern belt where there's no rust. However, one of the problems you do have in areas like that is, just like I said, a lot of heat going into parts. And when we pulled the transmission mount off, it was literally not attached to the top portion of the transmission mount. So it just like came right off, and I was like, oh wow, look at this. This wasn't holding on to anything, which is probably why I felt a slight vibration when I was driving this car. Nevertheless, everything is off underneath here. So I think it is time we jump up top, start prepping the engine bay for removal of this entire engine.
Well, PT, I will say that BMW engineered the front end of this car well. This came out pretty easily, didn't it?
It was, yeah.
There's no real dramas involved. There's no clean way to do an engine removal. There's fluid on the floor, and it drives us both a little crazy, but that's just par for the course. In any case, since I consider it my duty to poke fun at the BMW engineers, Toyota owners, rejoice, because I'd like to show you Exhibit A here. Look at all this garbage on here. There is
that's like next level thick. I have not seen
that's like icing
that
on
kind
a
of
cake.
like
look at that
thickness level in a long time of sludge.
That is just amazing.
Full sludge. So
and it doesn't end there either. It's all around the engine. I mean, if you come around to the back side here, I'm sure a lot of it, like Pete was saying earlier, comes from the valve covers. Because look at the back of the motor here. Look at the top of the transmission. It is just everywhere. But it did come out and it did run, so I'm not going to knock it too hard.
I'm going to put on my hazmat suit and just wash the entire engine bay here. As you can see, it's filthy. We've got some holes to plug, obviously, but I think that's going to be the next step. I really want to make sure that this engine bay is clean, because you don't get many chances to do this, so do it once and do it right. Woohoo! Man, that escalated quickly. I figured while I'm washing the engine bay, I might as well wash the underside, and wow, it's much cleaner. That stuff does work. The Sonax engine cleaner does work really well. But as you can see, wow, we have ourselves a serious mess to clean up. Anyways, I'm gonna keep at it here. I've got a couple more spots to finish off. I wanna wash the subframe and a bunch of the front end parts as well. And then we can finally move on here, but man, this is gonna be a bit of a cleanup, DP. I've given the engine bay some time to dry, so it is looking minty fresh. And now it is time to move on to moving items and retrofitting this engine bay with some of the M5 stuff so we can stuff that motor in there. And the first thing we're going to do is move this, what I think is an ABS pre-charge pump. This sits down here in the M5. And the reason for that is we've got an intake system that goes here, and the I think the remote oil filter goes here as well. So I've pulled those parts off of the M5, so let's get to installing them here.
PT with the Pro Spec funnel usage to get that brake fluid out of there, huh?
Well, I'm trying to keep this engine bay clean, man, and God, these brake lines here just came off so easily, no rust. Man, DP, I think we need to move to California because working on this car just reinforces the fact that if you are looking to buy a vehicle, a dream car or a lifetime car, certainly go down and buy a rust-free one because there's so little headache. There it is. We've now got that pre-charge pump set up, all the lines routed perfectly. I'll quickly jump over here and do a very, very simple mod, which we need to do to the brake master cylinder to hook up the clutch master cylinder, and that's just cutting off this nipple, DP. Like, I love BMW for this setup, so they've pretty much pre-built these. They didn't not include the nipple, so to do the manual conversion, all I have to do is cut this off here with a razor blade and then slide the tube on. And oh, she's gonna be a bit of a bleeder, but let's do this quick then. Oh yeah, whoa, too much. And there you go. With that being on there, I'll clamp that down and we should now have a fully functional clutch pedal set up. Another minor item that you're gonna have to swap over if you're doing this swap is this piece of plastic here for the air intake on this side. And because the air intake is here, the oil filter on the V8, or sorry, the 540i sits up here, and now on the M5 it moves back here. And unfortunately, we're gonna have to get rid of this bracket here and mount this guy up. I've been kind of going back and forth as to what to do. You can see there are spot welds here that we could try to drill out, but I don't love the idea of like exposing metal. I don't have a color match for this. So what I think I'm gonna do is just come in here with tin snips, cut them, bend them off, and then come in and like touch them up afterwards. I think the plan of my attack here is going to be to cut these all into individual pieces. So take this bracket, come in with the other set of snips. DP, maybe we should, this is a good time to tell the audience about tin snips, because I don't know if everybody knows this, but you know, they are colored green on the handle and red on the handle here. And the reason is, if you look closely, one turns this way and the other one turns this way, so it makes it easier to get into areas. As you can see, they are reversed. So there is also a universal one that's yellow, but I've learned this just recently and it's made life much easier, because sometimes you're like fighting, figuring out, why is this not working well? Well, switch to the other side and it'll certainly help you out. Come on. It's already fatiguing in the right spot. There you go. I think the pliers just don't have the reach here. I have to switch sides.
We finally found the most reliable part of a BMW, Pete.
It's sheet metal?
You knew it would be a bracket.
You're not wrong. The sheet metal is certainly reliable. Like if I had to guess which of these cars would rot first, it would certainly be the Lexus before the BMW, because the sheet metal on the German cars is far, far superior.
Is it?
It is, 100%.
Are you regretting this?
No, I think this is a good idea.
The Dremel wouldn't have been a better play?
No, because the Dremel, first of all, it would have been messy. And as you can see now, I'm just left with, I can kind of just like touch this up a bit and it's just a nice clean piece. I think that's the way to go. So I'm just trying to get an idea of what I need to worry about in terms of what's going to be showing in this area. And as you can see, that one tab down there really is the offender. The one above here also could go, but the other ones are covered up, so that's not a big deal.
I like your paint pen, PT. That's very pro.
This is the ghetto way of doing this until I figure out the right way to do it, but it certainly blends it more, right? Like,
it does.
It's kind of silly, but it'll certainly work for the time being. On the M5, we had studs that we could use. On this car, we obviously don't. So what I've done is just drilled holes, and as you can see, passed the bolt through. So I'm gonna do the same here, and that should give us enough rigidity. There are 3 mounting points on that bracket. I'm just gonna stick with 2 for the time being. There we have it. Bracket in place. Oh, I gotta tighten this side, DP. Well, once this is in place, I think we've solved that solution here. Now it is time to move onto our fuel line. Much like many things, the M5 fuel system does slightly differ than what we've got on the 540i wagon. Thanks to Paul over at Fixels, he's been guiding me through so much stuff. He told me, listen, you don't actually have to swap in the whole entire fuel system from the M5, which would mean dropping the tank, like changing the hard lines here. What you need to do is actually change out the fuel pressure regulator. So I've pulled it off of the M5. This, I'm pretty sure he mentioned, is a 5-bar, and as you can see, the 540i is a 3.5 bar. So the M5 does run higher fuel pressure, and it also has a different fuel pump. So I've already gone ahead and swapped that out on a day that I was off and just mucking about in here. So that's been swapped. Now here, what I'm gonna do is obviously replace this fuel filter with a new one, which of course I sourced from FCP Euro, home of the limited or the lifetime replacement warranty. So when this thing wears out, I can send it back to them, which again is super, super cool. Quick snag here. Here is our Hengst fuel filter, and I think this is the OE supplier for the BMW one. However, in trying to swap the M5 fuel pressure regulator over, I decided to obviously yank this one out, and when you pull this out, it's got this tube on it. Kind of weird. Okay, no big deal. I thought I just transfer it over, but when you take the tube off, the diameter of the fuel pressure regulator they provide is bigger than the OE one. So then I had to look and yanked apart the OE one, and you can see the design does differ. They have changed it for whatever reason. So looks like I am going to have to order another one of these from FCP Euro, except this time make sure that it's OEM, because this isn't going to work. So slight snag here. We're gonna have to leave this for a second. So here is the other line in question. I believe this is the purge line. The way the system works is your fuel pressure regulator's here, and you have one line feeding the engine. There's no line returning. So I think this is like a purge line that returns vapors. And on the S62, you can see the way it's kinked is the opposite way of this one. I think it goes like this. So it faces that way. And I mean, I could try to like bend this or whatever, but it's such a quick and simple way to swap this over. One last small little tidbit in the engine bay, and that is I'm going to replace these rubber hoses in the ABS system that tend to fail. I've read online, so I've gotten some stainless steel braided ones. As you can see, this one does feel nice and old. You can see, oh yeah, see it's cracking there. I don't know if you guys can see that, but I mean, me stretching it probably doesn't help, but it's certainly probably aged out, so it's a good idea to replace these. We will be using the steering box from the M5. It's quicker ratio, and it actually has a servo motor on it that when you hit the sport button, tightens up the steering. So it's actually a really cool unit. The one problem with it is, if you notice, the connector has been shredded. So this probably hasn't been working for a while. Thankfully, I was able to source this piece used. They're very, very hard to find. This does happen a lot. So a lot of the M5s don't have the tighter steering when the sport button works.
Are we deep enough in the weeds yet, PT? Is this
yeah, this is full weeds.
Is this going to be one of these 12-month-long builds now? Is that the plan?
Well, not really. There's just all these small little things that you need to do to make it proper. I want to make sure that this is done properly, and that means swapping over the steering box. That means swapping over the fuel lines. So I know this episode probably doesn't feel super exciting, but we will be out of the weeds shortly.
Well, Pete, gotta say, BMW life is not looking so great at the moment.
When you said we're going into the weeds, I think we're past the weeds and we're drowning in the swamp right now.
Oh man.
And so the problem right now is, of course, this little servo motor has these tiny little Allen head bolts. You can see the head there. That's in here, and it wants to strip. I was able, luckily, to get this one out by putting a bunch of heat into it and then using the Milwaukee impact just like super gently, this thing's great because it's got the different modes on it. So I was able to go to like low torque mode and get it out. So we're gonna see if I can do the exact same here. I'm just trying to put a bunch of heat into the thread assembly. man, this one's like fully
not loving life.
Oh man, this one's like goners. All right, I'm going to torque level 2 now.
Ooh,
which is strip worthy.
Here.
You know what? Maybe I'll go back and forth first.
Oh, good technique.
Oh goodness. You can see it's like the crud is crumbling off of it. Oh, yes! Victory! Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, this thing's hot, maybe? Yes. Let's see what this thing looks like. I don't even know how this comes off or comes apart. Oh, okay. That was the cap we were talking about there. And now I should be able to like pull this out of here. Wow, that's it. That's all it is right there. The other one is in the mail, so we're not going to be able to install this right now, but at least it's off so we can start fitting everything now to the subframe. Before we go bolting up the steering box to our subframe here, we need to put in this sway bar. Removing this with the these parts in here or the steering box in here proves to be a nightmare. I don't know how you would do this with the engine in place if you had to swap this. And I am putting in the M5 sway bar here. I will be doing both because it just makes sense to do that. So
the purity, Peter, the purity.
That's right, and I think I've already screwed this up, DP. See?
It's hard to talk and install at the same time.
No, but I think I've got it flipped the wrong way here. You can see these cutouts should be going around these bars. So let's pull this right back out here and flip it around. So there you go, we can bolt this up now. California, Canada. California, Canada. And this is also California, which is what I wanted to use to mount up the sway bar, but somebody has either dinged it or tried to lift up on it, so it is bent, which now means I do have to use the Canadian bracket on here. Quick little wire wheel, and look at that, it is so much fresher, but with this being exposed, it will be prone to rusting. So I've got gloves on here, right? This is all fine to do, right, DP?
Just make sure you squint.
Totally fine.
Yeah, just squint.
There you go. Yeah. Spray painted. I'll just hold the other side. I'm, making sure that this is going to be show car ready. Done. Coated. And this is a rust converter. So that's an encapsulator, which is a really nice. So it goes on clear, and any of the rust, I think it converts it over to black. So pretty cool little product from Eastwood. Next up, we need to install the center link, and as you can see, this is the old stuff that came out, and man, it is worn out. So I have gone with Dorman's premium line for the center link, and that essentially means it's got better metal, it's got like a smoother ball surface, it's used like hardened steel, and more importantly, it is 5 to 10 times more corrosion resistant than OE. So this thing is not going to rust, which I'm not going to be driving this car in the winter time, but still, it never hurts to have a bit of protection, especially in our climate here. With our steering box in place, our lines hooked up, and our power cable run here. Subframe is all but complete. One last thing to do, and that is to replace the engine mounts. Another wear item. You can see these are cracking, and they're just old. They're so old. So I got these from FCP Euro. These are Corteco, so they're a good brand. And I'm gonna bolt these up, and I think that is going to be a wrap on this episode. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this episode or any of the other videos we've done, certainly make sure to give me a like, a subscribe, and a notification bell. I know that you guys sometimes think like that doesn't go a long way, but it certainly does. It helps us tremendously in terms of producing more content. So thank you again. We will be back very soon. We've got to put the engine together, or on the subframe, put the transmission on, and then it is going back into the engine bay here. There's a lot of good content coming your way.